Welcome to the PreSnap Podcast presented by LineStar, the quarantine edition. Along with Tyler Weeman, I'm Shannon Somerville. We are ready to get you set for Week 14's Thursday Night Football matchup between the Raiders and the Rams. Tyler, both of these teams had high expectations coming into this season, but have not lived up to them. The Raiders, though, have kind of come alive within the last couple of weeks. They've won 3 in a row. Meanwhile, the Rams, though, they haven't won a game since week 6 against the Carolina Panthers. Ironically, that was against Baker Mayfield, who is now a member of the Los Angeles Rams. What do you think about Baker Mayfield of the Rams?
I think both these teams are in struggle street, and the fact the Rams have to bring Baker in just shows how much they're struggling.
Oh, man, it's been a brutal season for them. They're without Matthew Stafford, who looks like he will be out for the remainder of the season with a spine contusion. I mean, at this point, you want to rest as many guys as you can to preserve them for next season, because this season is a bit of a wash for them at 3-9 right now. No hopes of a playoffs. The Raiders, though, still alive in the playoff race. They're now 5-7. They've won the last 3. What do you see out of the Raiders lately?
Yeah, the Raiders have been playing well, and it looks like they could go on a little run. They have a very winnable schedule here coming up. So they absolutely are getting back into that playoff push. Will they make it? I don't know. They have a tough task, Right.
Well, last year they were 6-7, and they ended up winning out the rest of the season. So anything can happen with these Raiders, as we've seen last year. So we'll get into your daily fantasy projections in this one. I know there are, even though it might not be the most intriguing matchup overall, we do have some leverage for you in daily fantasy. We also have some prop bets for you, touchdown calls, and our game picks. So let's start things off with our daily fantasy projections, and we're going to start off with the Raiders. Right now, we're looking at the Raiders team. They look like the more complete team in this one, so a little bit easier to pick out the daily fantasy studs in this one. And when you look at Derek Carr, since an abysmal performance in week 8 where he had 101 yards against the Saints, he's thrown for at least 248 yards and 2 touchdowns in 5 straight games. And that's a problem for the Los Angeles Rams, whose defense has been subpar this season, 27th in pass defense DVOA, which is kind of surprising considering they've got Jalen Ramsey back there. They just haven't been playing well, which is good news for Derek Carr. And if you're playing in daily fantasy, I have to imagine, Tyler, that you're really leaning into Derek Carr in this one.
You got to lean into the Raiders here a little bit, especially Derek Carr. The one thing, though, is that he doesn't have a good game without Davante Adams having a good game. So with that being said, I don't mind Carr in a flex spot, but in an MVP or a captain spot, I think I'd rather lean to Adams over Carr, just because their big games have kind of coincided. So.
Davante Adams, as you alluded to, has had an unbelievable season since he got traded over from the Packers, and he just put up 177 receiving yards against the Chargers with 2 touchdowns. He ranks 4th in the NFL in receiving yards, and yeah, this is a guy who's the best route runner in the league, combined with that chemistry with Derek Carr that he's had since they were college roommates back at Fresno State. And going up against this Rams defense that I talked about earlier with Derek Carr, how they just haven't been good in pass defense. They're 31st in pass defense DVOA versus opposing teams' wide receiver 1. Davante Adams in an absolutely great spot again this week. What do you think, Tyler?
Yeah, Adams definitely in a good spot. The Rams defense is a little worse protecting the pass than they are guarding the run here. So I really like Adams, and he's been absolutely insane lately, averaging 30.5 DraftKings points per game over the last 4 weeks. Just seems like 2 touchdown games and 150 plus yards has been like his baseline.
Right. I mean, his teammates are even saying it's weird when he doesn't put up triple digits in receiving yards. I mean,
And I'm not sure that Derek Carr even knows he has other receivers. He's just been so locked in on Adams, and with good reason. He's making some defenders look silly, constantly seeing highlights of him break guys' ankles just from his route running and getting incredibly wide open. So I think you got to like Adams in this matchup.
Another player who's had an absolutely monster season is running back Josh Jacobs, who is now leading the NFL in rushing yards by 184 yards mind you, ahead of Nick Chubb. He's also leading the league in yards from scrimmage. He's just like seeing the field at this like sixth sense level. He just gets past the first level, and then he's like really hard to bring down. He's stiff arming guys going up against the Rams, who are better rush defense, 5th in rush defense DVOA, 12th in pass defense DVOA versus running backs. However, without Aaron Donald in this one, does that play into how you factored Jacob's fantasy prognosis for this one?
Yeah, I think you absolutely have to consider it when you have a player of Aaron Donald's caliber. But the one bright spot, as you alluded to on this team, has really been their rush defense. The rush D has been really good. However, the things with Jacobs is the Raiders have really been leaning on him when they get a lead. And so he could have all the volume he could possibly handle in this game. And really, when it comes down to fantasy running backs, you got to go the way of the volume. So with him getting all the volume, you got to like Jacobs. Even in a tough matchup, there's, a very high likelihood that he's getting into the end zone once, maybe twice.
So quite the trifecta there for the Raiders with Carr, Jacobs, and Devontae Adams from a daily fantasy perspective and season-long fantasy. If you have them in your lineup, you're probably doing pretty well for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, one of those guys, Jacobs or Adams, seems like they're going for 30 plus points every game. So those 3 or those 2 especially are, big time.
Anyone else you're targeting that could be kind of sleeper picks from the Raiders?
Yeah, so much of this offense goes through Jacobs and Adams, so there's not a ton as far as sleeper picks, but you got to go Foster Monroe and Mac Hollins. Both of them, if another person steps up, it's likely going to be one of those guys.
All right, let's flip the page to the Los Angeles Rams. Some question marks at quarterback. Who will it be? Will it be John Wolford or Bryce Perkins or even Baker Mayfield in this one? Now, John Wolford is kind of questionable in this one. And we have seen Bryce Perkins, although neither one of them have really put up great numbers. Wolford, 178 passing yards against Seattle. You did have 2 picks in that game. And going up against the Raiders, who they do have a lot of weaknesses on defense this year, 31st in pass defense DVOA. So whoever's the quarterback, is that a sneaky play for fantasy? What do you think about what's going on here?
I mean, the whole Rams offense is priced down pretty significantly. So they're cheap enough that I do think we're probably going to see 1 or 2, probably 2 different Rams players in like the optimal lineup. The quarterback, I don't know if they're that sneaky. Wolford's the better passer, so the passing game will probably have a better chance of being successful with him. However, Perkins does have some rushing upside, so Perkins is probably the better one from a fantasy perspective just because of that rushing upside. But as a whole, it's probably better for the team if Wolford is the QB.
And you're probably leaning towards Baker Mayfield not playing in this one. What I'm gathering from all the reports that have come out as of late, right?
Yeah, I mean, he just joined the team. He's not going to know the playbook. If he does, it's going to be such a vanilla playbook where they're likely just leaning on the run. So I wouldn't really consider him in a fantasy lineup.
All right, speaking of the run, looking at the running backs for the Rams, you've got Cam Akers back there. He's averaging just 33 rush yards per game. He did have 60 against Seattle with 2 touchdowns, though, so some value there. How do you evaluate this Rams running back room right now?
Yeah, it's really weird. So last week, Cam Akers had 70% of the carries, of the snaps, whereas Williams had 30%. And then the week before, it was Williams that had 70% and Akers that had 30. So we're not totally sure kind of how they're going to break up the backfield going forward. Seems like it's either a hot hand type situation, or maybe they're just kind of trading off who's the lead back for the game. I think they do need to figure out what they have in both of these running backs. So if ownership is real high on Cam Akers, I would like going and pivoting to Williams because we really have no idea how they're going to split up the backfield and who's going to get more carries, more targets, whatnot. It does seem like Williams is the preferred pass catcher. So Whereas Cam Akers has seemed like the preferred red zone option, where even in the game that Williams had 70% of the snaps, it was Akers that had the red zone target or attempt and not Williams.
Interesting. And then another interesting part is the wide receivers. Without Cooper Kupp, man, it gets really, really thin really fast. You have Van Jefferson in there now. And what do you make of him from a fantasy perspective, especially Allen Robinson done for the year? Cooper Kupp is out. So Allen Robinson, now is he your wide receiver one, right? Is he worth putting in your lineup though?
Yeah, Van Jefferson, I think, is absolutely acting as the wide receiver one. He's had the most consistent targets over the last weeks, and we know the Raiders' defense is not good. They're allowing 167 yards to wide receiver a game, and I think Van Jefferson's the most likely option out of Tutu Atwell, Skoranek, and Powell to have the most success.
Okay, and then how do you evaluate Tyler Higbee's position in all this? It seems like from a fantasy perspective, it's very hit or miss with him. What do you see from him this week?
Yeah, his target volume's gone way down since Stafford left, stopped playing this season. So I don't love him. However, the Raiders are giving up 5 receptions, 55 yards a game to the tight end. So he does have some upside. We know that he is kind of a safety blanket for the quarterback. So I like him. I don't love him. This whole offense, it's going to be really hard to project because they're in a point of the season where they need to figure out what they have in the talent that's on the team. And so it seems like they're really spreading the targets out where, multiple guys are getting 4 or 5 targets a game. And you really kind of just got to pick and choose which one you like the best. Some of the other wide receivers like Atwell or Powell, they have way more upside just because they're deep threats, or Powell's been getting some running attempts, some rushing attempts. So I like those guys too as the sleepers.
Yeah, that's a good point too, because at this point in the season, listen, the Rams season, this is done, but it's a great opportunity for them to see what they've got on their team right now and to kind of test out to see who can kind of handle certain workloads. And I think that's a good point to bring up when you're evaluating these guys from a fantasy perspective to see who could have the opportunity there.
Absolutely. And that's why I would not get too far into the weeds on the projections themselves for each player, because right now with the Rams, all these projections are super fragile. You have to make a assumption of who's getting, the most snaps, targets, whatnot. And really from game to game right now, the Rams might change everything just because they're not, succeeding this year. They're playing for next year already.
Right. Who would you be plugging into those captain MVP spots?
Yeah, I think that what's going to happen is the field is going to be super heavy on Adams and Jacobs, which they should be. They are the most likely to succeed in this game. But I think you also need to consider maybe Jefferson on the Rams or Akers or Williams. Like I said, Akers probably has the red zone job for the Rams, so he might work a little bit better in the captain spot than Williams.
All right. So some great options for you in daily fantasy. Make sure to check out all of our projections at linestarapp.com. Great tool for you to help optimize your lineups. You can go out there, win some money in these contests. Now let's go to our touchdown calls of the game for week 14, Rams Raiders. Tyler, who you got for an anytime touchdown?
You took the guy that I wanted to go with first, and then I didn't want to stay on the same side of the ball, so I went with Cam Akers. He, like I said earlier, he is the one that has got the most red zone looks since Stafford has gone out and this whole debacle of the Rams has happened. So I think Akers is the most likely Ram to get a touchdown, so let's roll with him.
All right. I'm going with Josh Jacobs, minus 145. Hey, let's not get cute here. Josh Jacobs is going to find the end zone in this one. He has 10 touchdowns on the season, leading the league in rushing yards by almost 200 yards. And you've got no Aaron Donald in this game. This Rams defense is a shell of what it once was. I think Josh Jacobs will have an absolute field day in this game. Give me a Josh Jacobs touchdown in this one. It's not that hard, folks. It's either going to be Davante Adams or Josh Jacobs in this one. I really tried to find some nice plus money value, but I just was like, I got to go with Josh Jacobs in this one.
Well, if you didn't, I was going to. So I assume that Ryan's going to end up going with Adams because I didn't go there. But for the sake of the show, I had to go with the Ram.
Yeah, got to get a little bit different here on the show. All right, let's get to our prop bets for this one. Tyler, where are you headed in the prop market for this Thursday night football game?
I'm going with the most likely wide receiver from the Rams. We're going Van Jefferson over 35.5 receiving yards. He's hit this in 2 of the last 3. And I think he does it again here. I expect Walford to start, and Walford is going to look to him early and often. This Raiders defense is not good, and Van Jefferson does have some big playability, so there's the chance that he's able to get this on 1 reception.
I'm also going to a wide receiver. I'm going to Davante Adams over 89.5 receiving yards at -115. Adams is averaging 98 receiving yards per game, and he's hit this mark in 7 of 9 games. This is the best route runner in the NFL right now. He's absolutely carving up defenses, and combine that with his chemistry with Derek Carr, his old college buddy, and that makes that duo an absolute nightmare to defend against. It'll be a problem for the Rams, who rank 31st in pass defense DVOA versus wide receiver ones. Yeah, give me Adams over 89.5 receiving yards. Anything under triple digits for him is just too low right now. All right. Those are our prop bets. Now let's get to our game picks. All right, here we go. Raiders -6 in this one. Who you got, Tyler?
I think you got to go to the Raiders here to win. Now, the big question is, do they cover?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I absolutely think they cover. How about you?
It is at home for the Rams. I really wish we knew what was going on in the quarterback spot, but if it's Walford, I think the Rams have a chance to cover.
Yeah, from my perspective, looking at the Raiders team, this is a Raiders team that's playing a lot better over the last several weeks, including the offense is kind of coming together. Really, you've got that trifecta of guys. You've got Carr, Davante Adams, and Josh Jacobs. Adams and Jacobs are playing out of their minds right now. Jacobs leads the league in rushing yards. Davante Adams is 4th in receiving yards. That is a combination of players to defend against. And then on defense, they've been playing better as well. They have had 11 sacks during their 3-game win streak after they had an NFL low 10 sacks the first 10 weeks. And it seems like guys like Chandler Jones have awoken, leads the NFL with 20 pressures over the last 3 weeks. That's more than the first 9 games combined. So you're starting to see guys on the defensive side start to come to play as well, which can be dangerous, especially for this Rams team that's absolutely battered right now. And Aaron Donald not being in this game, I mean, he's one of the best players on that team. Him not being in, I think, is also a huge factor in this one.
Yeah, and I mean, the Raiders absolutely have been playing better. However, they also haven't played that hard of competition lately. And once again, they're getting that again here. But even against the poor competition, they're only winning by 4 to 7 points every game. I just don't think they're that good of a team, while the Rams are absolutely terrible right now. At home, I think they can kind of keep it competitive. And this Raiders defense just is not that good. Yes, they are getting more pressure, so it is helping. But I do think there's a chance the Rams cover.
To your point, 2 of the last 3 were in overtime, I believe. So
yes. Yeah,
they are winning by pretty thin margins. And I do believe that the Rams have actually covered. I'm not sure what the record is on that, but they have been doing a decent job of covering the spread, even though they've been the underdogs in just about every game this season.
Yeah, and with good reason. Ever since Stafford went out, this team has been struggle street.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to have told us at the beginning of this season that this game would be almost irrelevant in the playoff picture, I mean, I think both of us would have been like, what? The defending Super Bowl champs against Las Vegas Raiders team that went all in this offseason and trying to make all these acquisitions, including Davante Adams. It's just crazy to see how interesting this season has turned out for a lot of different teams.
When they were a playoff team last year too, that's what's so crazy about it is they've got worse.
It's absolutely bananas right now. They still have a shot. I'm not sold on them making the playoffs.
They do have a chance.
A lot of playoff teams in the mix there lost over the last weekend, so that helps.
It's just wild that their record is worse than it was last year, when last year they had Gruden. They went through all that turmoil and they had the same coach this year, but have a worse record.
It's just crazy. The NFL is just wild this year, but we're here for it.
It is.
All right. That's going to do it for our Thursday night football preview. For more stats and analytics, check out linestarapp.com. If you're watching us on YouTube right now, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and sign up for those notifications so you know when we're coming out with videos. Tyler, thanks for holding it down in the studio. Appreciate all your hard work this week and for holding us down well. Some of us, try to get better in quarantine.
It is nice to have you back, at least on a show. May not be in the office, but it's nice to have the band back together.
All right. We'll see you guys soon. Have a good one.
Have a good one, guys. Bye.